Since the early days of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, one question has persisted. Why does the world's greatest religious power, the Vatican, view this movement with suspicion and even fear? Among the great institutions that have shaped history, a relatively young church, founded in the 19th century, provokes disquiet and deep debate. In this video, we will reveal the hidden truths behind this tension, uncovering the reasons why the Catholic Church sees Adventists as a serious challenge to its authority. Get ready for an analysis based on historical and doctrinal facts, with respect and clarity. Historical context of Adventists and the Vatican. The Seventh-day Adventist Church was born during a turbulent period in the religious history of the United States in the 19th century, as a result of the Millerite movement and the intense search for answers to biblical prophecies, especially related to the return of Christ. Officially founded in 1863, the church stood out for its emphasis on the Bible as the sole authority, Sabbath observance, and the imminent expectation of the final judgment. From their earliest years, Adventists were perceived as a dissident movement, especially for their rejection of Sunday worship, and for their prophetic interpretations that pointed out clear criticisms of the religious power structure of the time, including the papacy. The Vatican, aware of the Adventists' expansion and growing influence, came to regard this group as a theological rival and a threat to its spiritual hegemony, mainly because the Adventist Church directly challenged central concepts and practices of Catholicism. Throughout the 20th century, while the Vatican consolidated its global power and influence, Adventists expanded their presence around the world, intensifying missionary, educational, and social activities. This expansion and the commitment to rigorous biblical interpretation increased the tension between the two institutions, creating a scenario of indirect but firm confrontation. Doctrines and teachings that bother the Vatican. One of the main reasons why the Vatican views Seventh-day Adventists with suspicion lies in the doctrines firmly defended by this church. Founded on absolute fidelity to the Scriptures, Adventists seek to interpret the Bible in a clear and straightforward manner, especially with regard to biblical prophecies, which are the foundation of their religious identity. Among the teachings that cause the most discomfort is the strict observance of the Sabbath, the seventh day of the week, established as a holy day of rest and worship according to the fourth commandment. This practice represents a point of direct conflict with Catholic tradition, which celebrates Sunday, the day of Jesus Christ's resurrection, as the main day of worship. For the Vatican, Adventist maintenance of Sabbath observance is seen as an implicit rejection of ecclesiastical authority and an affirmation of the supremacy of biblical law over human traditions. In addition, Adventists hold a critical view of religious power that overrides biblical authority. They interpret certain prophecies, especially contained in the books of Daniel and Revelation, as clear references to the papacy and the historical influence of the Catholic Church, pointing out practices and structures that they consider to be distorted or deviant from the original message of the gospel. This interpretation is not an unfounded attack, but a critique based on Scripture, which inevitably positions the Vatican as the target of these evaluations. If this video is providing you with important information, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your opinion in the comments. Want to support our work? Use the Super Chat. Your help makes all the difference. Another aspect that creates discomfort in the relationship between Adventists and the Vatican is the firm defense of religious freedom. For Adventists, faith must be a conscious and free choice, without any kind of coercion on the part of the state or religious institutions. This stance is in direct contrast to periods in history when the Vatican sought to establish control over governments and societies, exerting political and religious influence in an authoritarian manner. Adventist insistence on religious freedom therefore represents a challenge to historical models of ecclesiastical power and control, intensifying distrust of the Catholic Church. Adventists' growing influence in the world. Despite its smaller size compared to large institutions, the Seventh-day Adventist Church has been growing globally in a consistent and structured way. Today, it is present on practically every continent, with millions of members and a vast network of schools, hospitals, and social institutions that work for the benefit of the communities in which they operate. This growth has been especially notable in countries where Catholicism was predominant, such as Latin America, parts of Europe, and Africa. This expansion is not only numerical, but also one of cultural and social influence, with Adventists promoting education, health, and social welfare in line with their biblical principles. Dedicated missionary work and efficient church organization put Adventists in a position to challenge established religious hegemony, especially in historical Catholic regions. This increases the Vatican's perception of Adventism as a rival that, although peaceful and focused on spiritual principles, could undermine its authority and diminish its global influence. Hidden truths and myths about the Adventist-Vatican relationship. Over the years, various conspiracy theories and sensationalism have arisen around the relationship between the Vatican and Seventh-day Adventists. Some claim that there is an open and explicit war, while others exaggerate the idea of systematic persecution. However, the truth is more subtle and complex. What really motivates the Vatican's fear is not hidden conspiracies, but the doctrinal coherence and practical influence that Adventists have gained over time. Criticism based on biblical prophecy and fidelity to Scripture puts Adventists in a position to directly challenge papal authority, but this takes place within the field of legitimate theological debate without major public conflicts. Historically, the Vatican has reacted against Adventists through official documents and positions, often treating them as a dissident and deviant movement, but without a direct confrontation. These reactions show their discomfort at the growth of a church that questions the power of the Catholic Church on a biblical basis. Why does the Vatican fear the Adventists? The Vatican's fear of Seventh-day Adventists can be understood from three fundamental pillars: doctrine, influence, and coherence. Firstly, Adventist doctrine represents a direct challenge to Catholic authority because it reaffirms the exclusivity of the Bible as the supreme source of faith and practice. Furthermore, its prophetic interpretation gives the papacy a critical role within eschatological events, openly questioning aspects of the Catholic Church's leadership and history. This position, although based on biblical studies, confronts head-on the foundations on which the Vatican sustains its spiritual and institutional authority. Secondly, the growing influence of Adventists on the global stage has been especially prominent in regions traditionally dominated by Catholicism, such as Latin America, Europe, and parts of Africa. This expansion is not only in numbers, but also in the social and educational spheres, with the creation of schools, hospitals, and community programs that reinforce the Church's presence and credibility. This advance represents a concrete threat to the religious hegemony of the Vatican, which has historically held a monopoly over millions of believers in these territories. Finally, the consistency of Adventists in maintaining their principles, even in the face of external pressure, reinforces the respect that many have for the Church and increases apprehension within the Vatican. The insistence on practices such as Sabbath observance and the defense of religious freedom, without concessions or adaptations to suit political or social conventions, makes Adventists a solid example of doctrinal resistance. This firmness hinders any attempt to absorb, silence, or weaken the movement, making it a real challenge to the authority and spiritual power of the Vatican. This combination of firm doctrine, growing influence, and unwavering coherence explains why the Vatican doesn't see Seventh-day Adventists as a simple minority group, but rather as a serious adversary that threatens its historical authority and religious dominance. Throughout this video, we have seen that the Vatican's fear of Seventh-day Adventists is not the result of conspiracy theories or unfounded fear, but a legitimate reaction to a movement that unites biblical fidelity, constant growth, and doctrinal coherence. Adventists challenge historical structures and exert an influence that goes beyond the number of their members, representing a solid example of spiritual resistance. Understanding these hidden truths is fundamental for anyone seeking to understand the complexity of religious relationships in today's world. We invite you to continue studying with attention and respect, always based on the Bible and historical facts. If this video has brought clarity and depth to your faith and knowledge, I ask that you strengthen our work with your like and subscription to the channel. Activate the bell to receive upcoming content that reveals essential truths, often hidden by large institutions. Share this video with your friends and family so that together we can expand the light of understanding. If you would like to support this project directly, consider making a donation via Super Chat. Your contribution is essential so that we can continue to bring relevant information respectfully and seriously. Thank you very much for your attention and support. May God bless your journey. See you in the next video.